Alright guys, moving along with the Mossberg project. This is the fire control unit, um, or the trigger assembly, whatever you want to call it. I wanted to disassemble it so I can match it to the color that I'm going to be painting the receiver. It's just a pet peeve. I just want them to look like they belong together when they're together. That's all it is. I just want it to be the same texture. So took this chance to show you guys how this works, and if you're having issues with it, this is how you put it back together, making sure it functions. So for disassembling it, we have to relieve the tension off the hammer, and this should never be fired outside of the weapon because the plastic will not handle the tension of the metal. So go ahead and place your finger on the hammer and pull the trigger and let it rest. And the first spring that we need to take is the hammer spring, which is in the back. This has to be drifted if this is the orientation of the weapon. It has to be drifted from right to left. From right to left. And I'll show you why when we take this. Now, it's a good habit to leave the pin in, or the punch in, after you drive the pin out. So place your thumb or finger or whatever you want, and there. So you see the punch is capturing that spring. It's under a lot of tension. So you can see how get it focused here. It's flared on one end, and it would only fit through the left side as you put it in. Now carefully remove your punch, and the spring and the plunger, or whatever you want to call it, comes out at once. I'm going to leave that aside. Moving along, so if this falls, that's what you need to take out next. But this is the arm that actually cocks the hammer or puts tension on the hammer. That comes out at the end. Next is the hammer itself, and it doesn't matter for these ones where you go left, right, right or left, and this pin right there comes out, and this comes out as well. Take it into the parts bin. From here, the trigger comes next, and the trigger has a linkage bar, which is this piece right here. Trigger, linkage bar, all the way down to the sear, which is down there, and that is the trickiest part of this whole thing, and we're going to get to that here in a minute. But the trigger also has a spring, which is housed back here. So keep an eye on that as you drift out, and I'll show you how to do that. So this is the pin that needs to be driven out, and just by applying slight pressure on the trigger, this can be pushed out. I always like to keep my punch in there just in case, and then there you go. So that's the trigger linkage bar and the trigger itself, and there's the spring that I was talking about. I'll just leave it in there into the parts bin. The next thing we're going to take out is this is actually the lever that allows you to charge the weapon without it being fired. So this pin is holding a lot of things. this pin right here is holding a lot of things. You have the bar spring, the linkage bar spring to keep it pushed upward, and you have the spring that applies pressure. So this is a two-ended spring. This one that keeps the the release lever down, and there's another spring behind it right there that keeps it down. So same way, I like always to drift my pins from right to left. I don't know why, but it's just a habit. But I'll keep the punch in as I'm drifting out. Let me see if we can find the punch with a longer nose. There you go. So this one, and again, I keep my finger over where the springs that I see, and I'm going to drive. This one. So I'll show you how these go when we put it back together. But for now, just be careful as you remove. I like to remove it step by step, see if nothing bounces out of there. All right, seem to be doing good. So that's the first spring that comes out. And just rotating the arm like so, and then it's the other spring. And I will show you how all these go back together and how they work together. Excuse me. Now the sear is captured by this little tiny spring right here. Okay, and I like to do it the same way. Just no reason to go off system, right to left, and there it goes. And there goes the spring bouncing on us, and there's the sear spring, and there's the actual sear. And that is it. That is all there is to it for the fire control group. Now there is a catch here, which captures the takedown pin. There, as you can see the dents. That's what captures it in, but I'm not taking that off. There's no reason. It's not gonna come off on its own. It's captured pretty tight in there, and for this reason I do not need to take it off, as I'm just painting basically the bottom surface. I don't want to get any paint in here to not interfere with tolerances. So I'll go ahead and do that and not bore you with the other process. You've probably seen many paintings or coating applications for this stuff. So I'll show you the end project. All right, we're back, and I already have the trigger module or the fire control unit already coated in the color I wanted it. Just the bottom, didn't want to do the sides or anything like that for tolerances and stuff. And I have here all the parts laid out from left to right in the order they go in. And we'll talk about it more as I put it back together. So these two pins right here, they're identical. It doesn't matter where they go. The only other ones that have to go in a certain spot is this one and that one, and we'll talk about them a little more when we get there. But the trickiest part is to get the sear and the spring on the pin inside the module like such. So the sear is oriented this way, and the spring for it is that way. So this needs to happen so the sear can rotate up and down, and the legs of the spring, as you see here, this end is going to be towards the housing body, and this is in applying rearward pressure on the sear. So this has to go like this down there, and I'll probably speed this up, but get some tools that help you, like this pin, this punch here. That's the same diameter as the pin. It helps a lot to get everything lined up. So I'll start by placing the guide there and attempting to place the spring on it. Let me get some needle nose, or oh, I got some tweezers. And you can use the actual pin itself to get this done. All right, now with this, the tricky part is to get that bent part of the spring back over. As you can see, let me get a pointer here. This part has to come and get wedged behind here. So I'm gonna do that. Succeeded. All right, so this is what it's supposed to look like. As you can see, got a tension on this sear. Now from here, this lever and these two springs have to go in kind of together all at once. Again, it helps to have something that aligns everything for you. But all right, this spring has to go in like this. All right. So go ahead and orient everything inside. and line it up. And so this leg on the bottom here, this has to go under the sear, like so. That helps align everything. Get a better tool here. I'm back. Sorry I had to answer a phone, but this is what I got so far. I have one end of the spring here, and the other one is hooked on top of the release bar here. So the next step is to get this spring in there, and it's going to be guided on the same pin. So it just needs to set down in there. I'll retract like everything here, and this will be squeezed out a little bit, squeezed in. Having big hands does not help in this situation at all. So this way I have the wire, and I'm going to push in a little bit to get down where I need to, so it's going to go through as well. Alright, so this is what we got so far. We got one spring here on top of this end of the bar with the other part of it here, and the other spring has pressure keeping down on the other end of the bar right here, and continues, and the other end of it is right here. So all I'm gonna do is just chase my guide pin out with the actual pin, and you guys like notice that I'm not using hammers or anything like that because you don't really need it. If you're using hammers or any sort of power, you're doing it wrong. There's something wrong. So from here, the next part that needs to go in is the trigger and the trigger bar. These two. And this piece right here needs to go on the indent like such, and you can't put this together if you install the trigger first. You have to put this in as one piece while the spring is attached to it. So I would like to go in this angle, so this will interact. So this has to engage with the sear. I don't know how visible it is, but it has to interact with the gap in the sear down here, down there. And I'm trying to make it as visible as possible. As this going, get my trigger here set up, and this is the angle that I'm gonna go with. There. This part right here, this cut is where this end of the spring going to be. So there's a lot of things going on at once here. You just have to I'm just moving the spring down to give me the room that I need. Keep your eye out for the trigger spring while you do this. It's down there, and that needs to be positioned correctly. As well. Alright, so now I have the sear surface engaged with the transfer bar, and the transfer bar is hooked inside the trigger, and the trigger is in place. Now, as you can see, we need to align that hole for the pin to go through, and it is this pin right here. And they're different because they're the same length, but as you can see there's a size difference. The thinner one is for the trigger and the other one is for the hammer. There. And now checking function. As you can see, the trigger is actuating the sear. The next thing that needs to go is the hammer, and as you can see there's a cut in the middle, and that faces the rear or faces the trigger, and the spring end right here has to go, this piece of the spring right here, it has to go in that slot as well, and it goes in like such, and just line it up as much as you can. Don't use force. As you can see, the body of the trigger housing is made out of plastic. So now the hammer is not under spring tension, but it's good to see the function of it. Alright, now the last thing is this. First thing to go is the arm, and as you can see there's a hook here and an indent. The indent needs to go down, and it hooks on this wrench shape right here needs to hook on the top pin, not the bottom one, the top one. And it needs to go from the back and positioned there, as you can see, and then keeping that down, the plunger and the spring goes behind it, and I like to give it a little shake to make sure that it's settled. And now this pin needs to go through, and again it has to go this way. So as you're looking at it, that way. Alright, now the compression, use whatever tools you have. Just keep in mind that you just need to assist it in pushing. And again, I'm not using force. If you have to use force on this, you're gonna mess something up. And there you go. The pin is flush on this side, and the function of it is such. As you can see, the sear works. It has captured the hammer, and when you pull the trigger, the hammer releases. This release bar actuates, and it's under spring tension. And we're good to go. Now we're going to put it on the receiver on the next video, and the shotgun will be complete after the receiver's done drying or curing, and that's going to be the next video. Thank you for tuning in, and see you on the next one.